Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Miocene, making the world a better place as a product designer, and I increase the entropy of the universe as a pure CSS animator. Maybe you know me by my pure CSS demos, like these many designers, rabbits, or CSS recreation of Monument Valley. So we all have been familiar with seeing fantastic, lively, animated websites for a long time. We know many different ways to draw something interesting on our Square web, breathe life into it, and even interact with it. We have JavaScript, WebGL, SVG, many image formats, and more. We also have CSS. I think it's quite underestimated tool for animation. So I want to talk about the possibilities of CSS in the next 30 minutes. Now in 2021, between the browser and the graphic editor is still a huge gap. We are missing the native functionality for rendering whatever the designers want. How did it happen? Let's turn to history. 1900, the first ever animated movie, they changed drawing. Yes, now it's difficult for us to call it that, but it was the first of its kind. Before James Stewart Blackton, no one used cartoon characters. 1917, the first ever full-length cartoon, The Apostle by Quirino Cristiani. 1928, Disney's most famous mouse appeared. You know him, I know. 1962, the first ever video game for personal computers appeared. 1991, the fourth Final Fantasy was released. And 1996, the first version of CSS appeared. Do you understand what I'm getting at? When HTML, JavaScript, and CSS were first introduced, animations had been around for over 19 years. Animations have evolved evolutionary and at the expense of film and game companies. The web is still to catch up with the 100 years all at once with the community's help. Therefore, we have so many different experimental technologies, but only the established ones, what is really needed, fall into the CSS standard. This allows the language to be more durable and more straightforward, more than it was running ahead of trends and hype. Experimental stuff requires a lot of mental and technological resources. Therefore, it is a good idea to review whatever something can be rewritten to native technologies periodically. But let's go back to 2021. I have identified four main sections that I want to talk about. And let's start by drawing. First one, background. This is a set of patterns and images that can be done with one background property. Any ideas on how we can do this? No, it's not a link to an image. This is all gradients. Gradients are really powerful. From the moment Coney gradients gained widespread support, we could paint anything with just one property. We need the background property to use the gradient function. Here are some ideas. You can set as many gradients as you want to. The first background in the list will be above all, and the last one below. We can animate all properties of the background property family. We can animate only background position and background size. The gradient function isn't animatable. It will change the value discretely. So what do we have? We have linear gradient, radial gradient, conic gradient, repeating linear gradient, repeating radial gradient, and of course, repeating conic gradient. And also we have background position, the point where our background should start, and background size, the size of our background, and of course, background repeat. So let's look at the most popular pattern, rhombuses. We cannot rotate the gradient without rotating the block. Therefore, it is necessary to somehow manage to crimp the square to get a rhombus. For example, we can crop the corners with a linear gradient or one for each corner. Set the size of the background and repeat it. That's all. We have the pattern with only one property. And also we can draw an adaptive stamp and something more complicated, like these cards. Many services use this technique as part of their visual language, but it also works well as a placeholder instead of graphics. For example, instead of photographs, if they are of poor quality or are completely absent. So on hover, you can move the gradient, resize it, or leave the cards in constant motion. If you want to, you can generate these patterns, take a 4x3 grid or any other, collect some variations of such forms and insert them into the sun. The upside is that it's easy to animate, adapt, and accommodate any of your color variables. You can combine them with blend modes or any other effects. You can also use gradients for micro interactions. For example, we have a Twitter like button, and on click, the animation should work. You can, of course, take several gifs, SVG, image sequence, or even a GIF. Or you can use an unattended pseudo element like before. Draw several gradients in it, like just 14 gradients, move them. And now we have a very lightweight animation that doesn't require changes in the DOM. By the way, I've pulled all the demos on a separate page. I'll give a link at the end of the talk. And at the end of each block, there will be a screen with can I use screenshot, so that every time you make sure that you can go right now and apply what I'm talking about. Next one. I've talked about border radius property many times. It's time for me to become an ambassador of the border radius, I think. Well, it allows us to make different shapes of objects. We can also draw a blob. Blob is a very simple thing. You take any block, round its corners, and that's all. That's a blob. Yeah, it sounds exactly the same. The blob needs an extended border radius record. This is when we write values through a slash. Before the slash, the horizontal radii of the ellipses. After the slash, the vertical ones. So yeah, we have 4 pairs of numbers. It is important to ensure that the sum of adjacent radii is 100%. Otherwise, the blob won't look so smooth and natural. See this straight surface? Yeah, even a small discrepancy like this one will greatly affect the smoothness of the figure. So blobs. Even in a static state, blob can be used as bullets, such as various other decorations. And since this is a regular block, we can put anything in it, like gradients, repeating gradients, photographs, interfaces, or anything. And this is how the list of speakers on the website may look. Here we have a blob with a photo the speaker, its shadow, and observe the element with the same scale block with a border without a background. Excellent effect. Really love it. And this is a fully animatable property. Such moving block can be used independently or in combination with others. Last year, a style called class morphism was hyped. So blobs are often used in it for a bright background of glass card. This style is also used with large surfaces, like the whole page of the site. Blobs can also be used here. Again, why it is good to use native CSS features? Because we can use values from our design system, or use blend modes, or use some different styles from your design system and from your other controls. Yeah, wide support. And let's move to the next section, to masking. First one, background clip. And by itself, it's not particularly interesting to animators. But together with any animated backgrounds, it turns out to be a cool effect. We also have many different graphics clips. They can also be masked. And it will turn out interesting, like this one, this demo. For this to work, we need a text block and a color background. Set the text to background clip, and the text becomes the mask of the background. Now, whatever we put on the background, everything will be clipped by the borders of the glyphs. So now you can put different gradients, pictures. You can put anything on the background. And you can move this background when interacting with the text block. It looks especially cool when this is a bright, colorful picture in the background, or colorful gradient, or few gradients. And you can add some stroke, shadow, and any other additional property. So here are really many opportunities to experiment like this. And you can also use this effect, the same background for the background of the page and for the text. And they both move the same way. For example, movement can be linked to the cursor movement. And yeah, you have this effect. It will look like the text has been cut from the card, but it's not. So next one, clip path. Clip path is also a property for masking with SVG, circle or polygon. For SVG, we need to specify a link to the file, file name, and the shapes ID. For circle, we need to specify the circle function, the radius size, and the circle center point. We set the polygon function for polygon and enumerate it in order of all the polygons points. Yeah, and you can specify coordinates in any units convenient to you. And there are some pretty good clip path editors out here, like bennettphilly.com, like this applabs.com. This toolkit is not rich, but sufficient for common effects, so you can use it. Good news, this property animates well. Yeah, but there are some nuances here. Like first, you can't animate between different functions. Otherwise, the animation will be discrete, which is generally logical. But you should animate only within one function, from circle to circle, from polygon to polygon. Secondly, this shape must have the same number of points. Otherwise, the animation will be also discrete. Therefore, if you need to animate the transition between triangle and square, give the triangle a fourth point. Select the coordinate to lie on any of the faces. And the great thing about ClickPath is that you can put anything on the background of the result shape, like content, graphics, like the full interface, video, or anything. And you can, for example, play with avatars from NPM. Once during the talk, I suggested that the dribble can be temped depending on the shot chosen. And after 2 months, they rolled out this feature. Maybe NPM will do that too. Yeah. Next one, mask image. And since we have touched on the topic of masking, another new easy way to mask is mask image. You may already be familiar with this property from CSS SVG masking. But now we have support for masking along any gradient. Here, only the gradients themselves are available to us, not the entire set of properties of the background family. So the gradients cannot be customized. And as we already know, gradients functions don't animate on their own, but you can animate the content of this block. I just want you to know that if you need to fade something, you have gradient masking too. Yeah. And let's go to next one. Next section is typography. And first one, text stroke. Yeah, text stroke. Another cool trick is now available to us natively, is text stroke. Of course, you could do the outline with picture and like similar fonts or something else. But all this is not so convenient. Now we can give absolutely any text a stroke using a text stroke property. This property has good support, although it still works with a prefix, but with one prefix everywhere. So what is the trick? Turn off the text color, turn on the stroke, and that's it. By itself, this property is not that interesting for the animator, but it helps to work with other effects. Like we can put this text on any graphic box, and voila, this looks good with video, bright graphics, and for example, with patterns and gradients. Next one, text shadow. We can also add shadows to the text. This is now the cool trick. The shadow is drawn precisely from the text without taking into account the stroke. And yes, this shadow is also animatable. And yes, text can have any numbers of shadows, like box shadow. And here are examples of design concept where this technique can come in handy. Come to a designer tomorrow and show them, look what you can do. Yeah, even like this. And this is my favorite one. As promised, a few words about 3D. Yes, there's 3D in CSS. And you don't have to do the Monument Valley levels. Give it to me, please. By the way, if you haven't seen this demo yet, go take a look. Maybe you will discover something interesting for you. 3D may be of interest to us, not only as a way to draw complex graphics, but also as help with previous techniques and as micro interactions. The world around us is voluminous, so it is natural for us to see the volume in services. Sorry. Light volume. Sorry. We still do not make VR here, and we don't rivet games. Everything should be within reason. Light hover animation, light perspective for different cards and objects. It's still cheap to implement, but so lovely to look at and interact with it. To work with transformations, we have the transform property. It has several functions for a variety of object transformations. For this kind of cards, rotation effect, we need the perspective and the rotate functions. The perspective function helps rotate an object in space, like in 3 dimensions. But the children of this object won't have the z-axis. Or we can use the perspective property on the parent block of these cards. Then this rule will apply to the children of this block to all of 4 cards. So the higher the value, the further the z-axis is from us, like this. If you need to rotate something more than 1 plane, use the transform style property instead of the perspective function. With this property, the block says, now all objects are inside me and I occur at 3rd dimension. So 3D can be used in a simplified version to loaders or other graphics on your site. Because here we can use variables and effects of your design system, or even use some content from your site in 3D. This means that the illustration will be consistent with your interface, or you can even use 3D for all your interface and interact with them. Yeah, wide support. And just a reminder of the transition property. Each control in this service which must interact with user must have transition property. Since we have to change the state of the control, when interacting, some styles will change. So that user doesn't feel like in the world of robots, you need to change the styles in with transition property, like on this demo. So transition, what do we have? First of all, it's a property name, which should be animatable. Duration of our animation, delay, and timing function. So about the duration of the animation. For interfaces, it is better to use a speed value in this range. The larger the object, the slower it moves. The longer the distance and the more complicated transformation the object undercomes, the slower it does it. So just use value in this range. We've covered a few tricks that you might find helpful in your project right now. Some of them are more independent, some work only in combinations. You can take them all, put them in a pile, shuffle them, and see what happens. But is everything so easy and cheap to animate? Well, not really. We have such a large list of animatable properties, and that's not even all, but many of them will reduce performance because they cost drawing. We can use these free properties without any fear, but everything that I've discussed today can also be animated safely. But if you are in doubt about animating something or not, go to CSSTriggers.com and check if this property is affecting the drawing. So all demos except for dribble shots can be viewed here. You can also play around with source here. Animations, animations are what surrounds us outside the web. This is natural and pleasant for us for interaction. And the micro interactions on the websites make users emotionally connected to the service, not to mention the best user experience. So don't forget about them when doing your service. Use animations and yeah, the world will be better. So thank you. And this is my Twitter account. You can write me anytime and ask some questions about demos and CSS animations.